Hello, Satnam. It's me, Shakti Sundari, and I'm back with you today with another reading from Daniel Odier's book, Desire, the Tantric Path to Awakening. So my video today is called How to Be Love and Have the Best Relationships Ever. I don't know if I put ever in there. Anyway, how to have the best relationships with Tantra. Feeling a bit nervous about talking about this because it's making a very big claim, and I could have given the video another title, but I knew that that title wouldn't be as appealing. And actually, you know, what I am going to say and read is very much about how to really embody love, you know, absolute love, and how to have the best relationships, the happiest, most loving, fulfilling relationships. And I know that that's what we all desire. I certainly do, and I've been striving towards that for many, many years. The last however many years of my life, 12 years, 14 years, I don't know, I lose track of my life, have been devoted to embodying love, embodying divine union, studying authentic relationships, studying Tantra. And it's all been born out of this quest for divine love and authentic relating. So I'm going to do what I normally do, which is to summarize what I'm going to say and then read from the book. Hopefully you'll stay with me, because the way that Daniel Odier expresses this is just so perfect and so eloquent. He really is a master. Nonetheless, I'm going to do my best just to articulate it first. So what gets in the way of having a fulfilling life? What gets in the way of having a fulfilling, successful relationship? What gets in the way of us embodying absolute love? In very simple terms, what Daniel Odier says, it's when we are absent to reality. And he gives all sorts of ways in which we are absent to reality, such as the very big one that he mentions a lot here, but there are many others as well, projection. So projection is when we put onto the other, whether it's an object, whether it's an event, or whether it's a person, our expectation of them and or our illusion of what they are, rather than being in interaction with the reality of what is. And that creates all kinds of distortions and dissatisfactions then, because we're not actually relating to what or who is there. We're relating to our imagined notion of what we think should be there or what we want to be there, rather than what actually is. And I can speak to that from direct personal experience. This is why this is so exciting for me. Although you've been studying this stuff for years, of course, every time we go back to it, there's another deeper level of understanding, right? And insight, hopefully anyway. So last year came out of a relationship that I would define as abusive, and I was in a relationship with a person I would describe as narcissistic. And I've written about this, and I've written about my experience of it, which was very painful, self-destructive, you know, not what I would have expected myself to be in. However, you know, one of the qualities of what, if we look at the behaviors of the narcissist is that they are lying, and they're creating a false persona, and they're projecting a false persona. So you're not actually interacting with the person who's there. They're creating a false persona through pathological lying and all kinds of stuff like that. So, you know, here I am sitting thinking, well, how did I invite that in? You know, what was I doing? You know, I wasn't lying. I wasn't creating a false persona. I was being myself. So how did I attract this? How did I invite this? And then as I've been exploring deeper within myself around this, of course, I can see how I was projecting. I was projecting onto this man the notion that he was the one I had been waiting for, because I've been devoting so much of my life to preparing myself for a divine and sacred relationship. And when he gave me all the signs of being what I had put out to the universe for in very concrete terms, you know, it looked to me as if, that is the one. And so I projected all of that then onto him in terms of, yeah, that's what he is. And when he began to not be that I had imagined he was, and he presented himself as, but let's just take it back to me, I felt really let down. I felt really confused. I felt really disappointed, right? So you can understand now how my own projections and my own creating of an illusion, rather than seeing the reality and interacting with the reality, were also creating this pain and this dysfunction for me, from me. Okay, I hope that makes things a bit clearer, but let's go on to read now. So this is really, really cool stuff. So we start once again with the body. So I know I've said it so many times that I'm going to say it again and again and again. There's this thing of presence, and presence is the answer. How do we be present? We are in the body and we're paying attention to what is happening through our senses, in very simple terms. So Tantrism, says Daniel Odier, believes the body is the temple, and that seated at the heart of this temple is divinity. The body is seen as a stringed instrument, the sarangi, and often compare presence to the world with the tuning of this instrument. And then I'm going to just paraphrase. So basically, if we tune our instrument, our body, to be really, really present to life, then just like the sarangi, the musical instrument, it can be sitting in the corner of a room, and when another instrument begins to play, the sarangi will automatically begin to vibrate and actually emit sound too. In the same way, when we are attuned to life, we vibrate in harmony with life, whatever is happening, right? Does that make sense? So doing an experiment of trying to be present to our sensorality, so our senses, our 5 senses, for just 3 minutes is enough to make us realize a great number of obstacles get us off track from our objective. So here comes the list of ways in which we are not present, or we make ourselves not present. And these are all the ways that we cut ourselves off from life and love and authentic relating. Distraction due to the automatic activity of thought. Crazy mind, crazy mind. Number 2, projections. Seeing or projecting something from our own imagination onto the screen of the other. We're doing it all the time. 3, references to the past. Something that happened before. How often do you get triggered? Me too. I'm not just talking to you as if I know it all. I certainly don't. Triggered by something that someone's doing now that is actually because of a memory of something that happened in the past. The discrepancy, number 4, between what we desire and what we are living. Yeah. Dissatisfaction with what is. Well, what is. So what's the point of being dissatisfied with it? It is. Accept it and see how things change. I do that all the time because I moan about the weather. Number 5, the contradictions existing between our life and our beliefs. Yes. I believe I'm love. Don't always embody it. And probably loads more. Can't think of one right now. 6, the feelings of our original sin and our unworthiness. Can relate to that one, absolutely. Not so much original sin, but feelings of unworthiness. Yes, I can relate to that. 7, the desire to modify the tenor of reality. So tenor being the tone. I can relate to that too, because I'm hypersensitive. Sometimes I find a lot of things that are going on out there in life very harsh to my senses, all of them actually. Forgotten what number I'm on. Next one, the desire to be present only to pleasure and to obscure all suffering, tension, anxiety, and unease. Oh, isn't that a big one for so many people? It's like something uncomfortable happens that we define as unpleasurable or bad or wrong or nasty or suffering in some way, and we try to push it away rather than embracing it. Last one, the desire to modify the duration of some elements of reality, whether we want to make things longer or shorter. Is simple one. God, I have to sit through some really boring meetings at my kids' school, and I'm so impatient, and I'm sitting there dying for it to finish so I can get away and cook dinner and be at home. I'm so impatient. And then other times I've been making love, and for whatever reason it's had to come to a finish before I want it to, and I feel frustrated. Don't you ever have that? Yes. So our difficulty in being present comes principally from the fact that we do not accept reality as it is, because we see neither its beauty nor its depth. These words are so important. We wrongly imagine that life, as we reorchestrate it, is more worthy of being lived. Can you relate to that? Can you relate to that? I certainly can. Hence, we lose considerable energy wanting to transform reality so that it corresponds to our plans, ideals, and beliefs. Can you relate to that? Me too. Unfortunately, says Daniel Odier, reality is not made to conform itself to our desires. Thus do we lose a lot of time in this absurd occupation. That is the chief difficulty in living a more freely flowing, fluid life. That is onomatopoeia, and it's also alliteration. Just thought I'd throw that in. One in which reality is no longer, and another F, no longer frozen by the mind. Oh, the mind. That's why meditation is just such a great help on this pathway, because of course meditation and awareness and mindfulness practices help us to still the mind and come into neutral mind space. When the mind is quiet, we can be present. The mind is used to and marvelously capable of moving quickly and harmonizing with the flow of life. Now get this, every time we intervene to make something that is transitory by nature last, so life is changing all the time, we block the natural flow of life. Every time we intervene in an attempt to cut off a sensation or an emotion that does not correspond to our desires, we paralyze, we block the natural flow of life. Who can relate to that? Something arises in you, something maybe like the feeling of wanting to cry. And I'm, as I've said, very sensitive and very open in my emotions. And then yet, when I was a teenager, I felt that I had to suppress my tears very much, particularly around my father. So in some situations, I will just cry very easily. And in other situations, particularly if I'm in a professional setting or with a man, if I don't know him anyway, I will hold those tears back, suppress them and repress them, and get a massive, great big lump in my throat and feel really uncomfortable instead. How many times do you cut off a sensation or an emotion that doesn't correspond to your desires, I wonder? What happens? It gets frozen and stuck in the body. Oh, uncomfortable. What happens when we do that all the time? We get really contracted and stiff and stuck in our bodies. Yucky. So what happens then? He gives an example. So what happens, for example, we meet someone, we fancy them, we're attracted. What happens, I'm paraphrasing now, is that our fears rise up, fears of being wronged, fears of being rejected, fears of being abandoned. All of these things surge up immediately, right? And what then happens is that it's very hard to actually truly connect with somebody when all of that shit's going on inside. Future actions will thus lack spontaneity and intensity. This is, listen to this, we will find ourselves in this situation in which two people lacking in completeness will, by a sort of mutual cannibalism, attempt to fill the void in their lives. Each will use the other from this perspective. This will completely paralyze the relationship. Anybody recognize that in themselves? Fears of being abandoned, fear of being rejected, fears of being deceived, right? It's all happened to us before. We project that into the relationship and immediately it's no longer alive and real. Now, sentimental and psychological projections, done that loads. Reference to memories, done that loads. Insistence on finally finding what we want. All this will create significant areas of darkness or shadow. I can so relate to that. Wherein the story we are in the process of building will get bogged down. Neither grace nor spontaneity will dwell in any part of the unfolding that the extraordinary adventure of a meeting between two people can be. Novelty alone gives us the illusion that this time, at last, we have found our soulmate. If we could, however, meet another while remaining totally present, we would have an experience of immense freshness. Immense freshness. So in that sense, if we're able to be present, then every moment is new. How could we possibly be bored or stuck in a relationship? And not just, let me say, a sexual, romantic, intimate relationship, or relationships. How could we possibly be? If we're being present, then everything that's happening is happening for the first time now. Now, like, how can you get bored in your sex life if you're present? Really? Many people confuse sentimental projection with love. Yes. When we use sentimental projection, we are not sincere with ourselves. I recognize that in myself. We deceive ourselves just as we deceive the other person. We have a plan for ourselves and for the other person. If she or he does not conform to this plan, we will be disappointed and resent her for it or him. Because of this, we are not in tune with ourselves, and we do not give the other person the space for freedom that is indispensable if love is to become manifest. So I can totally see, for example, how I did that in my last relationship. I thought I had met my twin flame. I mean, talk about massive projection of soulmate multiply magnified. And so he's saying that he presented with his false persona, and when that did not then manifest in reality in terms of the way that he lived and the way that he was and the way that he interacted with me, there was this massive dissonance. Like, hang on a second, my beloved obviously is a tantrika, my beloved obviously is a meditator. Hang on a second, my beloved obviously loves to practice being aware and make tantric love. That was not the reality. There I was caught between my illusion, my projection, and the reality. They weren't matching up. No wonder it felt shit inside, right? No wonder it felt shit. I was deceiving myself and him. All our projections, all our expectations, all our desires, all our blockages of the flow of life are thus negations of love's freedom. So here comes the bit about absolute love. Love without freedom does not exist. Freedom cannot coexist with the ego, and the ego can only be dissipated by total presence to reality, presence deprived of all fear, all strategy, all planning. The only love that can satisfy us is the love that can arise from within us when all projections cease. Wow, I mean, I hope you stayed to the end. I know this is probably a long video, but that is fucking full of the wisdom of truth. And I think I'm going to just read it again. All our projections, all our expectations, all our desires, all our blockages of the flow of life are thus negations of love's freedom. Love without freedom does not exist. Freedom cannot coexist with the ego. And the ego can only be dissipated by total presence to reality. Presence deprived of all fear, all strategy, all planning. That's it, my loves. That is it. So once again, the answer is total presence to reality. When we're totally present, we are not scheming, we are not strategizing, we are not afraid, we are not projecting, we are not expecting, we are here. And how do we be here? We be here now by feeling, sensing, living through this body, which is the temple of the divine. It's the temple because when we are fully present, the divine, which is life and love, flows through us unimpeded because we are not stopping it. That's what it means when people say they're living in flow. They're living in the flow of life, right? Nothing stopping it. Now, one final thing I want to say this morning is this is a very high and lofty ideal to be aware of, to aspire to come towards in our practice of being present moment by moment to life. And I also don't want me or you or anyone to feel inadequate or judged if this is not how you're living right now. But I do think it's a wonderful illumination into what can cause dissatisfaction with ourselves, with life, and with our beloved. So just taking this awareness in and letting it permeate and letting it sink into your consciousness, and then just beginning to notice how we project, how we block off life, and just noticing what effect that has. You know, it's a lifetime's work. Of course it is. And we are all doing our best in every moment, and it's all perfect. And that's the end of this little video. Thank you so much for being with me, and looking forward to seeing your comments and being back with you again very soon. Much love. That sounded like a question, didn't it? Much love. There, yeah, much love. And Sat Nam.